The first time actually stopped, like the world held its breath. Miles Carter was standing in his driveway with a garden hose, a wet patch spreading across his sneakers. A man in a pale button-down stood at the curb, holding a clipboard like it weighed nothing. Certified envelope, return receipt. The kind of paper that doesn't bring good news. And across the hedge line, Harper Wu, new neighbor, quiet smile, always in motion, paused with her hands on her hips and asked, almost casually, "Miles, are you married?" How do you answer that when you're holding legal trouble in one hand and a life you thought was over in the other? How do you explain that your heart can be both buried and still beating? The envelope had his name printed so neatly it looked confident, like it already knew the outcome. Miles blinked once, like that could reset reality. Junie's laugh floated from the backyard, high, bright, completely unaware of the cliff edge her father was standing on. He'd lived on cliff edges before. 6 years earlier, he'd stood in a hospital hallway with a newborn in his arms and a doctor's mouth moving too slowly, saying words that didn't belong in that day. Not congratulations, not healthy, not everyone's okay. Sophia had been so sure, too. That calm certainty she carried like a lantern. She'd squeezed his hand in the delivery room and whispered, "Meet her for me if I get tired." Miles had laughed because it was Sophia, dramatic in the sweetest way. Then everything went sideways, fast and quiet at the same time. When it was over, he held his daughter, tiny, warm, bewildered by the world, and he promised her something he didn't know how to deliver. "I've got you," he whispered into her soft hair. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." He said it like the universe was listening. The universe didn't respond. Those first months weren't a montage. They were an endurance test that didn't end. Junie cried at night, like she was remembering something she couldn't name. Miles learned the language of different cries, hungry, scared, lonely, overtired, and how each one crawled into his bones. He learned how to warm a bottle with one hand while keeping a baby balanced against his shoulder with the other. He learned how to do laundry at midnight because he couldn't stand the smell of sour milk on tiny onesies. He learned that grief doesn't come in clean waves. It comes in ambushes, a grocery aisle, a song from a passing car, the way the sunlight hit the kitchen counter at 4:17 p.m., exactly how it used to when Sophia would come home and kick off her shoes. His parents flew in from North Carolina and stayed for a while, sleeping on the pull-out couch, making casseroles, whispering in the hallway when they thought he couldn't hear them. "We can't leave him like this," his mom said once. "We can't stay forever," his dad answered, voice cracked like old wood. When they did leave, the house didn't just get quieter, it got heavier. Miles had a job he used to love, before. Back when late nights meant being busy, not being broken. He'd started his career as a stage tech, wires, lights, cues, the magic behind the curtain. Sophia used to tease him that he was addicted to problems you could fix with a wrench. Eventually, he moved into project management for a restoration firm, historic buildings, boutique venues, places with charm and rot hiding under the paint. His current assignment was the old Indigo Theater, a century-old building downtown, all velvet seats and flaking gold leaf. It was gorgeous and delicate and expensive, the kind of project that didn't forgive mistakes. His boss tried, at first. "We'll be flexible," she said, leaning against her glass office wall. "We'll make it work." But flexible in a world of investors and deadlines had a shelf life. There were days when childcare fell apart and Miles showed up to a site walk with Junie strapped to his chest in a carrier, her tiny fists gripping his shirt like she owned him. Some people smiled like it was sweet, Other people looked at him like he'd brought chaos into their clean world on purpose. Once, during a meeting with a donor who'd paid for half the theater's chandelier, Junie toddled across the floor and slapped her hands against a blueprint table. Miles had felt his stomach drop like a curtain cut loose. He'd apologized so many times his mouth went dry. That night, he stared at the ceiling and wondered if his whole life was going to be one long apology. And then there was the trust. Sophia's father, Judge Graham Delaney, had moved like a shadow through the early days after her death. He didn't cry in public. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't ask what Miles wanted. He offered solutions. The Delaneys had money, not flashy money, old money, tied up in foundations money, the kind that came with boards, attorneys, and polite threats disguised as concern. At 2 months postpartum, Miles had been drowning in medical bills, funeral costs, and a job that was quietly losing patience. Judge Delaney invited him to his office. Dark wood, leather chairs, a framed photo of Sophia in her graduation robe, smiling like she had secrets. "I want Junie protected," the judge said, folding his hands. "Stability, continuity." Miles had nodded, too tired to argue with the word protected. Then a lawyer slid papers across the desk. A trust for Junie, funds for childcare, a safety net that looked like salvation. But it came with conditions. No romantic partners living in Miles's home until Junie turned 10. A clause about maintaining a stable household free of disruptive influences. A requirement that Miles remain in the same school district unless trustees approved a move. At the bottom, a line that made his throat tighten. If the trustees believed the conditions were violated, they could pause distributions pending review. And reviews could take months. Months Miles couldn't afford. He remembered looking at Sophia's photo and thinking, "I'm doing this for her, for Junie, for us." He signed. Not because he agreed, because he was desperate, and because Judge Delaney's gaze had said something without speaking it. "If you don't sign, I'll still protect my granddaughter. I'll just do it without you." Miles told himself he could live with it, that love was done anyway, that the clause didn't matter because he didn't want anyone else. Grief makes promises you think are permanent. Then, life keeps going. By the time Junie turned 6, they had a rhythm that almost looked normal from the outside. Junie went to school. Miles worked. They ate dinner at the kitchen island because the dining table still felt too formal, too much like before. On Saturdays, he took her to the pier to watch pelicans dive and boats glide through the water like they had nowhere urgent to be. At night, when she finally slept, Miles sometimes took Sophia's brass compass keychain from the junk drawer and rolled it in his palm. Sophia had bought it at a tiny shop on their honeymoon, an old brass thing with a clear face and a needle that trembled like it had feelings. She'd clipped it to his keys and said, "Now you can't pretend you don't know where you're going." He'd kissed her and said, "I'm going wherever you are." Now the compass needle always settled, north, steady, indifferent. Miles didn't feel steady. He felt like a man walking with a cracked map. That spring, the house next door finally sold. It had been empty long enough that ivy started claiming the porch railing like it belonged there. A "for sale" sign leaned crooked in the grass until one day it was gone. A moving truck arrived on a Thursday, and Junie pressed her hands to the window like she was watching a parade. "Do you think it's a kid?" she asked, eyes wide. "Like a friend kid?" Miles smiled, though his stomach did that little twist it always did when Junie wanted something he couldn't guarantee. "I don't know," he said, "but we'll be neighborly either way." Harper Wu was not a kid. She stepped out of the truck in faded jeans, hair shoved into a messy clip, holding a roll of blueprints like it was a purse. She looked around like someone taking inventory: trees, gutters, the angle of the sun. When she noticed Miles watching, she lifted her hand in a small wave. Not flirty, not stiff, just polite. Miles waved back, then went back inside because politeness was easy. Anything else felt dangerous. The first real moment between them wasn't a barbecue or a casual introduction over a fence. It was a storm. South Carolina storms weren't gentle. They showed up like a drumline, sudden and loud, turning the sky the color of bruises. Junie hated thunder like it was personal. That night, the wind howled hard enough to make the windows rattle. Junie burst into Miles's room in her pajamas, eyes wet, breathing fast. "It's mad," she whispered. "The sky's mad." Miles sat up and opened his arms. She climbed into his lap like she'd done 1,000 times. "It's just noise," he murmured, rubbing her back. "Big noise, but we're safe." A crack of thunder hit close enough that Junie flinched and grabbed his shirt with both hands. Miles shifted into calm mode, the one he'd built out of necessity. He carried her to the living room, turned on a lamp, put on a playlist of soft piano music, and sat with her under a blanket. They counted between lightning and thunder. They named all the stuffed animals on the couch and assigned them jobs, like protecting the front door. Eventually, Junie's eyelids got heavy. And then the power snapped off. Silence. Total, thick silence. Then the rain sounded even louder because nothing else competed with it. Junie's eyes flew open again. Miles swallowed a sigh. He found his phone flashlight and made a show of being unfazed. "Okay," he said lightly. "Adventure mode." He went to the kitchen for candles because he'd learned to be prepared, and that's when he noticed something outside. Harper's backyard was flooding. Not just puddles. A sheet of water streaming toward her foundation like it had plans. Miles didn't think. He grabbed a rain jacket, jammed his feet into shoes, and stepped out into the downpour like he was walking into a decision. Halfway across the yard, Harper's porch light flickered on, generator maybe, and she appeared in the doorway holding a flashlight. "What are you doing?" she called, voice sharp with surprise. Miles pointed into the rain. "Your drainage is backing up. If that water pools against the house, it can mess with the foundation." "And you decided this right now?" She sounded almost offended. Miles pushed wet hair out of his face. "Your house doesn't care what time it is." For a second, she stared like she couldn't decide if he was ridiculous or something else. Then she stepped down onto the porch barefoot, the rain spraying her legs. "Okay," she said, voice clipped. "Tell me what you need." He didn't expect that. Most people either thanked him from a safe distance or told him to mind his business. But Harper grabbed a shovel like she'd been waiting for a reason to use it. Together, in the rain, they cleared debris from a clogged drain and redirected the flow with sandbags Harper apparently kept in her shed, like a person who planned for worst-case scenarios. When it was done, they stood there soaked, breathing hard, laughing a little like the adrenaline had found an outlet. "My power's out," Miles said, more as an explanation than a complaint. "My kid is not a storm fan." Harper's expression softened at the word kid. "I have a battery lantern," she said, "and hot tea on a camp stove. If you want, you can bring her over, just until this passes." Miles hesitated, because stepping into someone else's house felt like stepping into another life. But Junie was inside, trembling under a blanket, and Miles was tired of being a one-man island. So he said yes. Junie clung to his side as they crossed the wet grass, but the lantern light inside Harper's kitchen made the world feel less scary. Harper put a mug of warm chamomile in front of Junie like it was a magic potion. "Storms are loud," Harper told her gently. "But loud doesn't mean dangerous. Sometimes it just means the world is rearranging itself." Junie blinked. "Do you know the storm?" Harper smiled. "I work with water. I plan for storms, so maybe I know their habits." Junie looked impressed, like Harper was a superhero in a cardigan. Miles watched the exchange and felt something shift in his chest. Not romance, not yet. Something simpler. Relief. They stayed until the thunder moved farther away. Junie fell asleep on Harper's couch with her head on a throw pillow shaped like a whale. Miles tried to apologize for the intrusion. Harper waved it off. "You didn't intrude. You showed up. That's rare." After that night, Harper became more than a wave across a driveway. She started timing her morning walks so she'd pass when Miles was loading Junie into the car. She left a small potted plant on Miles's porch with a sticky note that read, "Native mint, mosquitoes hate it." Junie began calling her Miss Harper without being prompted, as if Harper had always been part of their neighborhood. One afternoon, Junie came home from school holding a tiny sand dollar in her palm like it was treasure. "Miss Harper gave me this," she announced. Miles looked up from his laptop. "When did you see Miss Harper?" Junie shrugged like it was obvious. "She was outside and I told her about my spelling test and she said I did a good job and she found it at the beach." Miles stared at his daughter. "How long were you outside?" "Not long," Junie said quickly. Then she added, softer, "She listens." Miles felt that sentence land somewhere deep. Because yes, Harper listened. Not like a person waiting for her turn to talk, like a person actually absorbing. Miles didn't realize how hungry he'd been for that until it showed up. And then the trust notice arrived. It came on a Tuesday, certified mail, the kind that required a signature like it was demanding responsibility. Miles signed with his name and immediately regretted having hands. He stood at the kitchen island, opened the envelope, and read the words twice because his brain refused to accept them the first time. Notice of review. Trust distributions to Junie Carter will be subject to reassessment due to potential concerns regarding compliance with stability conditions. A hearing date. A list of documents requested. A polite sentence about cooperation appreciated. And the signature at the bottom, Judge Graham Delaney. Miles felt the room tilt. Junie was at the table coloring, humming to herself, unaware that the floor under her life was being tested. He forced his face to stay neutral, because that's what single parents do. They swallow panic like it's medicine. By that evening, Miles had made calls. Lawyer, trustee office, anyone who could translate polite into, "What are you actually threatening?" The answer was simple and brutal. If Judge Delaney believed Miles had violated the clause, if he believed Miles's household was unstable, he could freeze the trust. No trust meant no after-school care. No trust meant Miles couldn't keep the flexible role he'd negotiated at work, because he'd need to take more hours, more travel, more everything. And if he couldn't keep Junie's routine, Judge Delaney could argue he should step in. Not full custody, maybe, but enough control to make Miles's life feel like a supervised visit. Miles sat in the dark after Junie went to sleep, staring at the brass compass in his palm. He hadn't done anything wrong. He hadn't even dated. So why now? The next day, as if the universe was trying to layer irony on top of fear, Harper walked over while Miles was in the driveway watering the patchy lawn he never had time to fix. She nodded at the muddy spot near his mailbox. "You've got a drainage dip there, It's pulling water toward your foundation." Miles managed a half smile. Add it to the list of things trying to collapse. Harper tilted her head. "You okay?" He could have lied. He'd lied to himself for years. But the paper in his pocket felt like a weight he couldn't pretend wasn't there. Harper's gaze didn't flinch. It just stayed. And then she asked it, soft, careful, like she knew questions could be sharp. "Miles, are you married?" Time did that freeze thing again. The served notice, the garden hose, the sunlight, Junie laughing in the yard. It all held still like a photograph. Miles looked at Harper and felt something he hadn't let himself feel in a long time. Possibility. Also terror. He swallowed and said the truth, because maybe truth was the only thing that wouldn't break him. "No," he said. "I'm not." Harper's shoulders loosened slightly, like she'd been holding tension without knowing it. Miles kept going because stopping felt like retreat. Junie's mom, Sophia, she died when Junie was born. Harper's face changed. Not pity, not shock. Recognition. "I'm sorry," she said simply, like she meant it without needing to prove it. Miles nodded, throat tight. "It's been me and Junie. That's the whole story." Harper's eyes flicked to the backyard where Junie was pretending a stick was a microphone, then back to Miles. "That's not a small story," Harper said. Miles almost laughed because no one ever said that. People said, "You're so strong," like strength was a compliment instead of a sentence. He tried to make it lighter. "I'm not exactly a neighborhood mystery on purpose." Harper's mouth curved. "I didn't mean it like that." Then she hesitated, like she was deciding whether to admit something she normally kept locked up. "I get rebuilding," she said. "Different reasons, but the same feeling. Like you're living in the after." Miles's phone buzzed in his pocket. Lawyer callback. Reality tapping him on the shoulder. But Harper was standing there, sun on her hair, and for the first time in years, Miles wanted to stay in a moment instead of escaping it. He gestured toward his porch. Can I offer you iced tea? I have probably too much." Harper's smile widened a fraction. "Sure." That afternoon, they sat on Miles's front steps while Junie played with sidewalk chalk. Harper traced patterns on her glass with her finger, while Miles tried to decide how much to share. He didn't tell Harper about the trust at first, because it sounded insane, like he'd sold pieces of his life for money, which he had. But Harper was quiet in a way that made silence feel safe. So he told her. Not all at once, not dramatically, just the facts. Sophia's father, the trust, the clause, the notice. Harper listened with that steady attention that made Miles feel like he wasn't being judged, just understood. When he finished, Harper exhaled slowly. "That's a lot of control," she said. Miles gave a humorless shrug. He calls it protection. Harper looked toward Junie, who was drawing a giant sun with eyelashes. "And you signed," Harper said gently, not accusing. "Because you had to." Miles swallowed. "Because Junie needed stability, and I didn't have the luxury of pride." Harper nodded once. Okay. Okay. Not wow, not why would you do that? Just okay. Miles didn't realize how badly he needed someone to accept the messy parts without making him feel smaller. That night, Junie asked if Miss Harper could come over for dinner. Miles almost said no out of reflex. Keep life simple, keep distance. Then he remembered the notice in his drawer. There was no such thing as simple anymore. So he texted Harper, awkwardly, like a teenager who'd forgotten how humans work. Junie says you're invited to spaghetti. No pressure. Harper replied 5 minutes later. Only if Junie approves my garlic bread skills. Junie's approval was immediate and loud. Harper showed up with a paper bag of bakery bread and a small jar of something green. Pesto, she explained. It makes mediocre spaghetti feel like a decision. Miles laughed, surprising himself with the sound. Dinner was chaotic in a way that didn't feel exhausting. Junie asked Harper 100 questions. Harper answered like none of them were silly. When Junie spilled water, Harper didn't flinch. She just handed Miles a towel, like she understood that parenting was a constant cleanup operation. After Junie went to bed, Harper stayed on the porch with Miles, the humid air wrapping around them like a blanket. I didn't think I'd be sitting on a stranger's porch eating leftover garlic bread, Harper said, a little amused. 2 months ago you were a stranger, Miles replied. Harper leaned back against the porch post. True, then quieter. I moved here because I needed a place that didn't remind me of who I used to be. Miles glanced at her. What happened? Harper's jaw tightened slightly, then relaxed. A long relationship, she said. 10 years. We worked together, lived together, planned everything like it was a project timeline. Miles nodded because timelines were a language he spoke. And then? He asked. Harper looked out at the street, the dark quiet of a neighborhood settling in. Then I realized I was living inside someone else's story, she said. And when I tried to step out, he treated it like theft. Miles felt a flicker of anger on her behalf. Harper continued, voice steady but careful. I didn't leave because I wanted something new. I left because I needed my own life back. Miles understood that in a way that made his throat tighten. He wasn't looking for a replacement for Sophia. He was looking for himself. Over the next months, Harper became stitched into their days. She picked Junie up from school once when Miles got trapped in a site inspection downtown. Miles watched Harper's car pull into the driveway and felt an unexpected emotion. Not jealousy, not possessiveness. Gratitude so big it scared him. Harper brought Junie a tiny book about coastal birds. Junie insisted on reading it at the kitchen table while Harper pointed at pictures and said names like they mattered. Osprey, Harper said. They're dramatic. Junie squinted. Like Daddy when he loses his keys. Miles groaned. I'm not dramatic. Harper's eyes flicked to the junk drawer. You keep a compass on your keychain. That's a little dramatic. Miles froze. Because he'd never told her what the compass was. It was just always there, tucked in his pocket, thumbed when he was thinking. He cleared his throat. It was Sophia's idea. Harper's gaze softened again. It's a good one. Somewhere in those ordinary days, Miles realized he was smiling more. Not because life was suddenly easy, because it was shared. And then the pressure came, like it always does when something good begins to feel real. Judge Delaney showed up unannounced on a Saturday. Miles opened the door and found the judge standing on the porch in a crisp polo shirt, looking like he belonged there. His gaze moved past Miles into the house like he was inspecting. Miles, he said, voice polite. I was in the area. Miles forced calm into his tone. You didn't call. Judge Delaney's mouth tightened in a way that could have been a smile if you didn't know better. I didn't want to disturb you, he said, which was ridiculous given he was literally disturbing him. Junie appeared behind Miles, peeking around his leg. Grandpa, she squealed, suddenly joyful. Judge Delaney's expression changed for her, softer, warmer. He crouched, arms open, and Junie ran into him. Miles watched the affection and felt conflicted, because Judge Delaney wasn't a villain in Junie's eyes. He was just Grandpa. They sat in the living room, and Judge Delaney asked Junie about school, about her teacher, about her favorite snack. Then his gaze returned to Miles, sharp again.
"How are things?" the judge asked.
Miles could hear the subtext. How stable are you? How compliant? Miles kept his voice even. We're fine. Judge Delaney glanced at the kitchen counter where 3 mugs sat, one of them not Miles's, not Junie's. Miles's stomach dropped. Harper had been there earlier, helping Junie build a marsh diorama out of paper and glue while Miles took a work call. Miles had forgotten to clean up the evidence. Judge Delaney's eyes lingered on the extra mug. Then he looked back at Miles. Just remember, he said quietly, the trust exists to keep Junie's life consistent, uncomplicated. Miles's jaw tightened. Junie's life isn't a courtroom argument. Judge Delaney's tone stayed calm. No, it's a child's life, which is why adult decisions must be careful. Junie returned from the kitchen holding a drawing. Look, she announced. I drew our house and the marsh and Miss Harper's garden. Judge Delaney's eyes flicked to the name. Miss Harper? He repeated. Junie nodded enthusiastically. She knows all the birds, and she helped me with glue. Miles felt his chest tighten. Judge Delaney's smile for Junie didn't reach his eyes when he looked at Miles. It's good Junie has community, the judge said, as long as boundaries remain appropriate. Miles's hands curled into fists under the arm of the couch. He wanted to scream. Instead, he nodded, because screaming wouldn't pay for after-school care. After the judge left, Miles stood at the sink staring at the extra mug like it had betrayed him. Harper arrived later that night with a bag of oranges from her tree, and one look at Miles's face told her everything. He came by, Harper said, more statement than question. Miles nodded. He saw the mug. Harper set the oranges down slowly. I'm sorry. Miles laughed once, sharp. It's not your fault, it's mine. I invited you in and forgot my life is being audited. Harper's gaze didn't waver.
Do you want me to step back? The idea punched Miles in the chest. He imagined empty evenings again, quiet meals, Junie asking where Miss Harper went. He imagined pretending he didn't care. I don't want you to step back, Miles said. His voice cracked on the last word. Harper nodded slowly. Then we'll be smart. Smart. That meant secret adjacent. Harper stopped coming in the house when Judge Delaney might drop by. She stayed in the yard, on the porch, in public spaces where no one could accuse Miles of violating the clause. Miles hated it, not because he wanted to rush romance, but because he hated living like his life was something shameful. Around that time, Junie started asking questions kids ask when they feel a shift. Are you and Miss Harper family? She asked one night while brushing her teeth. Miles paused. Not exactly. Junie spit, wiped her mouth, and looked up at him in the mirror. But she's like in our days, Junie said. Like homework days and dinner days. Miles felt his throat tighten. She's important, he admitted carefully. Junie nodded, satisfied, like she'd been confirming something she already knew. Thanksgiving came with its own test. Miles's parents were driving down from Asheville to visit, and Junie asked if Miss Harper could come. Miles's instinct was to say yes. Then he pictured Judge Delaney's extra mug gaze. He hesitated long enough that Junie noticed. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Is it because Grandpa doesn't like her? Miles froze. Kids hear everything, even the quiet stuff. He crouched to Junie's level. "It's not that simple," he said. Junie crossed her arms. "It never is." Miles almost smiled at that, because Sophia used to say the same thing when Miles overplanned. He called Harper. "I want you to come," he said, voice low. "But I don't want to put you in the middle of my mess." Harper was silent for a moment.
Then, "Miles, I'm already in the middle if I'm standing at the edge pretending I'm not." So Harper came. Miles's parents adored her, which was both comforting and terrifying. His mom pulled Harper into the kitchen like they'd been friends for years. "Help me with the sweet potato casserole," she said. "Miles thinks spices are a personality trait. I need backup." Miles's dad took Harper outside to look at the marsh view, making corny jokes until Harper laughed. Real laughter. The kind that loosened the room. Junie glowed like a kid with a secret wish coming true. After dinner, Miles stood on the back porch with Harper, the air cool enough to make their breath visible. The house behind them buzzed with dishes and family noise. Harper leaned on the railing. "Your mom is a force," Miles chuckled. "She's been trying to get me back into the world for years." Harper glanced at him. "And?" Miles stared out at the dark line of the marsh. "And I didn't know how," Harper's voice softened. "You're doing it." Miles swallowed. "It feels like betrayal sometimes." Harper didn't pretend not to understand. "Tell me about Sophia," she said quietly, "if you want." Miles felt something crack open. People avoided Sophia's name like it was a trap door. They thought silence was kindness. But silence had turned Sophia into a ghost in his own house. So Miles talked. He told Harper about Sophia's love for old maps and coastal towns, how she used to drag Miles into tiny antique shops and come out holding some chipped piece of history like it was treasure. He told Harper how Sophia sang off-key on purpose because it made Junie laugh when she was pregnant. He told Harper about the compass and how Sophia used to spin it on the kitchen counter like it was a toy. Harper listened in the dark, her hand resting on the railing near his. When Miles finally went quiet, Harper said, "She sounds like someone who made a lot of light." Miles's eyes burned. She did. Harper turned her hand palm up on the railing, not grabbing him, just offering. Miles rested his fingers against hers. The contact was simple, but it felt like a choice. If you're still with this story right now, take a second to hit like, because what happens next is where the quiet becomes a storm. Winter brought its own weather, but the real storm was paper. Miles's lawyer called in early December. "They've scheduled the review," she said. 30 days. They want statements, schedules, character references. Miles sat in his car outside the old Indigo Theater, staring at the building's peeling facade like it could answer him. "On what grounds?" he asked, voice tight. "Concerns," the lawyer said, tone clipped. "They're framing it as due diligence, but it's pressure." Miles knew exactly whose pressure. That week, Judge Delaney invited Miles to lunch. Not asked, invited. At a downtown restaurant where the napkins were folded like origami. Judge Delaney ordered without looking at the menu. Miles couldn't taste anything. "I've heard you've been spending time with the neighbor," the judge said calmly. Miles set his fork down. "Junie spends time with the neighbor. She's been kind to her." Judge Delaney's gaze sharpened. Kindness can blur lines. Miles felt anger climb his throat. "What do you want, Judge?" The judge's jaw flexed at the use of judge, like Miles was both respecting and challenging him. "I want assurance," he said, "that Junie won't be confused,
that she won't be exposed to instability. Miles leaned forward. Junie has been stable because I made her stable. Judge Delaney's eyes didn't flicker, and the trust made that easier. There it was, the leverage spoken aloud. Miles's fingers curled around his water glass. Are you threatening to take it away because I have a friend? Judge Delaney's tone stayed smooth. I'm reminding you of the agreement you signed. Miles's stomach twisted.
Shame and rage together. A toxic blend.
Judge Delaney continued, if you want this to go smoothly, you'll keep your household uncomplicated. No overnights, no entanglements, no appearances. Miles sat back, breath shallow. Do you hear yourself? He asked quietly. You're telling me how to live in my own house. Judge Delaney's eyes were cold. I'm telling you how to keep Junie safe. Miles left lunch with his hands shaking. That night, Harper found him in the driveway, staring at the ground like it had betrayed him. Hey, she said softly. Talk to me. Miles held up the compass keychain. He's using this agreement like a leash. Harper's eyes narrowed. Then cut it. Miles let out a bitter laugh. It's not a rope I can just snip. It's money, childcare, Junie's school, my job flexibility. Harper stepped closer. And your dignity. Miles looked at her, something desperate in his expression. What if I lose? He asked. Harper's voice was steady. Then we figure it out.
We don't let him decide what your life is allowed to be. Miles wanted to believe her, but belief didn't pay bills.
The week before Christmas, the old Indigo Theater project hit a crisis. A beam in the balcony level was worse than expected. Repairs would be expensive. The donor who'd funded the renovation demanded a revised timeline. Miles's boss pulled him aside on site. I need you available, she said, fully, no interruptions. Miles nodded, mind racing, because availability was exactly what he couldn't promise. He went home that evening to find Harper on his porch, a small bag in her hand. Junie told me you were stressed, Harper said. Junie, behind the door, peeked out like she'd arranged this. Harper held out the bag. I brought you something. Inside was a small framed print, an old nautical chart of Charleston Harbor, faded and beautiful. I found it at a shop downtown, Harper said. It reminded me of the way you look at the world.
Like you're always trying to find the safe route. Miles stared at the chart. His throat tightened. It's too much, he said automatically, because receiving things felt risky. Harper's smile was gentle. It's paper. You've survived worse. Junie burst out then, announcing, We're having hot chocolate night! Miles looked at his daughter and realized she was building a life for them on purpose. A life with warmth. A life with people. Later, after Junie fell asleep on the couch mid-movie, Harper stood by the tree Miles had put up, small, simple, decorated with a mix of old ornaments and Junie's handmade creations. There was one ornament Miles never missed, a brass, compass-shaped charm Sophia had bought years ago, hanging like a whisper. Harper touched it lightly. This one, Miles swallowed. Sophia. Harper nodded, eyes thoughtful. You don't erase her. You don't replace her. Miles's voice was rough. Sometimes I'm afraid happiness is disrespect. Harper turned toward him. Happiness can be evidence, she said, that her love didn't die. It changed shape. Miles stared at her, heart pounding. He wanted to kiss her right then. Instead, he said, Stay. Harper's eyes softened. Miles. He shook his head. Not
Not like that, not overnight. Just stay here for a while. Sit with me. Harper sat on the couch beside him, careful distance. Their shoulders didn't touch, but the space between them felt charged, like a wire humming. New Year's arrived like a deadline wearing glitter. Miles hosted a small gathering, neighbors, a couple of Junie's classmates' parents, his parents still visiting. Junie fought sleep like it was a rival. She made it to 9:45 before collapsing on Miles's lap with a dramatic sigh. Miles carried her to bed, tucked her in, kissed her forehead. She murmured, half asleep, "Don't be lonely, Daddy." Miles froze. "I'm not," he whispered. "I'm right here." Back in the living room, the countdown began on someone's TV.
Harper stood in the kitchen, holding 2 glasses of sparkling cider, like she didn't trust champagne around fragile things. Miles walked toward her, drawn like gravity. Harper watched him approach, expression unreadable. "Any resolutions?" she asked quietly. Miles breathed out. "Yeah." Harper lifted an eyebrow. Miles glanced toward the hallway where Junie slept, then back to Harper. "I'm done letting other people decide what my life is allowed to be," he said. Harper's gaze sharpened, like she felt the truth. "And what does that look like?" she asked, voice low. The living room erupted into 10! Miles's heart pounded with the numbers. He stepped closer, close enough that Harper's breath warmed his face. "It looks like me telling you that you matter," he said. "And I don't want to keep acting like you're a secret." 5! Harper's eyes glistened just a little. 4! Miles's voice dropped. "It looks like me choosing a direction." 3! Harper whispered. "Miles." 2! He lifted Sophia's compass keychain from his pocket, pressing it into Harper's palm. "Hold this," he said, "just for a second." Harper's fingers closed around it, confused and moved all at once. 1! Cheers erupted. Miles leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't a movie kiss. No fireworks in the sky. It was careful, tender, like a question asked with courage. Harper kissed him back, like an answer she'd been afraid to say out loud. When they pulled apart, Harper's forehead rested briefly against his. "Happy New Year," Miles whispered. Harper's voice shook. "Happy New Year." And for a moment, it felt like the world was letting them have something. Then, the late wave hit. In mid-January, Caleb Rourke appeared. Miles first saw him because Junie did. A sleek car pulled up in front of Harper's house. A man stepped out with a bright smile and a coat that looked expensive in a way that tried too hard. Junie, peering through the blinds, whispered, "Is that Miss Harper's old friend?" Miles felt his stomach drop. Harper opened her front door, and the man leaned in like he belonged there. Miles watched Harper's posture stiffen, watched her keep her expression controlled. Miles didn't know the man, but he recognized entitlement when he saw it. Later that night, Harper came over with her shoulders tight and her smile forced. "Miles," she said quietly, "I need to tell you something before you hear it somewhere else." Miles's chest tightened. "Okay." Harper took a breath. "That was Caleb, my ex." Miles nodded slowly, trying to keep his face calm. Harper's voice stayed steady. "He's in town because he's chasing a contract, and because he can't stand the idea that I left." Miles felt anger flare. "What does he want from you?" Harper's mouth tightened. "My signature, my silence, my attention." Miles stepped closer. "And what do you want?" Harper's eyes lifted to his.
Not him.
Miles exhaled. Harper continued, voice sharper now.
But he's good at making problems. He'll try to make me look unstable, unreliable. He'll push. Miles's mind raced straight to Judge Delaney, because unstable was the judge's favorite weapon. What's the worst-case scenario? Miles asked. Harper's eyes darkened. He finds out about the trust and uses it. Miles's throat went dry. How would he even... Harper didn't answer, because she didn't need to. Caleb was the type who collected information like it was currency. The next week, Miles got an email from the trustee office. Additional concerns raised. Additional review items added. Miles stared at the screen until the words blurred. He called his lawyer. "They're escalating," he said. His lawyer's voice was grim. Someone's feeding them. Miles felt cold settle in his gut. That night, Judge Delaney showed up again. This time, he didn't pretend it was casual.
"I'm hearing things," he said, standing on the porch like a verdict. Miles's hands clenched at his sides. "From who?" Judge Delaney's gaze was sharp. "From people who care about Junie." Miles let out a humorless laugh. "Or people who care about control." Judge Delaney's eyes narrowed. "This neighbor of yours, Harper, her past is messy." Miles's anger snapped. "Don't talk about her like she's a stain." Judge Delaney's voice was calm, too calm. "I'm talking about risk." Miles stepped forward. "Junie is not a legal chess piece." Judge Delaney's gaze didn't flinch. "Then prove your household is stable without distractions." Miles felt the trap closing. He could do what Judge Delaney wanted, push Harper away, preserve the trust, or he could tell the truth and risk everything. Junie's voice floated from behind him. "Daddy?" Miles turned and saw his daughter standing in the hallway, clutching her stuffed dolphin, eyes wide. She'd heard enough. Miles knelt. "Hey," he whispered. "Go back to bed, okay?" Junie looked past him to Judge Delaney. Her small face tightened. "Are you mad at Miss Harper?" she asked. Judge Delaney's expression softened for her, but the softness felt calculated. "I'm not mad, sweetheart," he said. "I just want what's best for you." Junie's eyes narrowed. "Miss Harper wants what's best for me, too." Miles's throat tightened. Judge Delaney straightened, mask back in place. "We'll handle this as adults," he said to Miles. "The hearing will clarify everything." Then he left. Miles closed the door and leaned against it, like his legs weren't sure they could hold him. Junie walked up and pressed her forehead into his stomach. "I don't want you to be lonely," she whispered again. Miles closed his eyes. In that moment, he realized the cost of hiding wasn't just paperwork. It was teaching Junie that love should be hidden to be safe. Miles couldn't do that. The hearing was scheduled at a courthouse annex downtown, a smaller room than a courtroom, but it still smelled like power. Miles wore his best button-down. Harper sat beside him, hands folded, face calm, but eyes bright with contained fury. Judge Delaney sat across the table with the trustees and a lawyer at his side. Caleb sat behind them, not officially part of it, just present, smiling slightly like a man watching a game he'd rigged. Miles's lawyer laid out their case. Junie's school record, Miles's employment record, character letters from neighbors, a statement from Junie's teacher about her stability and joy. Judge Delaney's lawyer raised the clause like a weapon. "Mr. Carter signed an agreement," he said. "The concern is compliance and the potential confusion a romantic partner introduces." Miles felt Harper's hand brush his knee under the table.
grounding him. Then the trustee asked, "Mr. Carter, are you in a relationship with Ms. Wu?" Miles's heart hammered.
This was the moment where lying would be easy. A technical lie, a legal lie. But Junie's voice echoed, "Don't be lonely." Miles glanced at Harper. Harper's gaze held his, steady. No pressure, just presence. Miles looked back at the trustee. "Yes," he said. Judge Delaney's face hardened. Miles kept going. "And I'm not ashamed of that," Miles said, voice shaking but clear. "I'm ashamed of the fact that I signed a contract in my grief that treated my private life like a liability. I signed because I needed help. I signed because I was drowning. And I would sign again if it meant keeping my daughter safe. But I won't teach her that love is something we hide to keep money." Caleb's smile faltered. Judge Delaney's lawyer started to speak, but Miles raised a hand. "I'm not finished," Miles said. His voice surprised even him, firm, grounded. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the brass compass keychain, holding it up. "My wife gave me this," he said. "She's gone." School attendance, health care, housing stability. Not Mr. Carter's emotional life. Judge Delaney's lawyer objected. Judge Delaney finally spoke, voice low. "You making this sentimental?" Miles met his eyes. "No," he said. "I'm making it honest." Harper's voice joined his, steady and quiet. "Control isn't the same as care." Judge Delaney's gaze flicked to Harper, then away. For a moment, Miles saw something behind the judge's expression. Pain, fear. A father who lost his daughter and tried to prevent losing anything else by tightening his grip. It didn't excuse the harm, but it explained the shape of it. The trustee announced they would pause and deliberate. 10 minutes. Miles stepped into the hallway, breathing hard like he'd run miles. Harper followed. Miles leaned against the wall, eyes closed. "I might have just..." He couldn't finish the sentence. Harper stepped closer. "You didn't just risk something," she said. "You chose something." Miles opened his eyes. "What if it costs Junie?" Harper's voice softened. "Then we figure it out. Together, not under someone else's thumb." Miles stared at her, then let himself do something he'd avoided. He reached for her hand in public. Harper squeezed back. When they were called in, the trustees sat with papers in front of them. The head trustee spoke carefully. "We will not suspend distributions," she said. "However, we are recommending an amended agreement. Clear criteria focused on Junie's welfare.
No vague language policing Mr. Carter's personal life. Miles's breath left his lungs in a shaky rush. Judge Delaney's face tightened. "I object." The trustee's tone was firm. "You can object, but as trustee board, our duty is to the beneficiary. Stability is measurable. Fear is not." Miles felt like his knees might give out. He looked at Harper, who blinked slowly, holding herself together. Then, unexpectedly, Judge Delaney spoke again. Not to the trustees, to Miles.
Can Miss Harper still come for hot chocolate night?
Miles laughed through a sudden sting in his eyes. "Yes," he said. "She can." If you want one more twist before we land this plane, go ahead and subscribe, because what Caleb does next almost blows everything back up. Caleb tried to strike back, of course. 2 days after the hearing, Harper received an email from Caleb's lawyer, threats about intellectual property, accusations about breach of contract. Harper showed it to Miles on the porch, jaw tight. "He's punishing me," she said, "because he can't control me." Miles felt anger flare. "What do you need?" Harper's voice was steady. "I need to handle this without hiding, the same way you did." So Harper filed a response, documented everything, refused to be pulled into private negotiations designed to isolate her. Caleb showed up one last time at Harper's house, trying charm first, then pressure. Miles watched from his driveway, heart pounding, ready to intervene. Harper stepped onto her porch and held her ground. "I'm not coming back," she said, loud enough that Miles could hear. "And you don't get to rewrite what happened." Caleb's smile turned sharp. "He's using you," he said, nodding toward Miles. "You know that, right? He needed a nanny and a warm body." Harper's voice didn't waver. "And you needed a mirror. We're done." Caleb's eyes flashed. "You'll regret this." Harper leaned forward slightly. "I already regretted staying as long as I did." Caleb left, and the silence afterward felt like a door closing. Harper walked across the lawn to Miles. Miles didn't say, "Are you okay?" like a script. He said, "I'm proud of you." Harper's eyes filled, but she didn't let the tears fall. "Don't," she whispered. "If I start, I won't stop." Miles stepped closer and rested his forehead against hers for a moment. Simple, steady. "You don't have to stop," he murmured. "You just don't have to do it alone." Spring returned slowly, bringing warm evenings and the smell of salt in the air. Miles kept working on the old Indigo Theater, but he stopped apologizing for being a father in meetings. When his boss demanded no interruptions, Miles negotiated a different role: clear boundaries, clear deliverables. It cost him a promotion,
but it bought him time with Junie. And for once, he chose what mattered instead of what looked good. Judge Delaney didn't vanish from their lives. He was still Junie's grandfather, still present. But after the hearing, his visits changed. He called before coming over. He didn't scan for extra mugs, and one day he stood in Miles's kitchen while Junie showed him a drawing of our family, which included Miles, Junie, and Harper, with Sophia drawn as a star in the corner of the page. Miles held his breath. Judge Delaney stared at the paper for a long time. Then he spoke softly. "Your mother would have liked that you remember her," he told Junie.
Junie nodded, solemn. "We do." Judge Delaney glanced at Harper, who stood near the sink holding a dish towel, not intruding, just present. His voice tightened. "And it's good you have people." Harper's eyes softened. "I'm not here to take anything," she said gently. "Only to add what I can." Judge Delaney's jaw worked, like he was swallowing pride. Then he nodded once. It wasn't forgiveness, not fully, but it was a step. Later that night, Miles stood at the marsh boardwalk alone, the sky streaked with pink and gold. He held Sophia's compass in his palm, thumb brushing the dented edge. He imagined Sophia beside him, hair blowing in the wind, smiling like she always knew he'd find his way eventually. "I miss you," he whispered. "And I'm still here." The compass needle settled, steady. Miles exhaled. He wasn't lost. He was choosing. When he got home, Harper and Junie were on the porch. Junie was holding a paper boat Harper had taught her to fold. "Daddy," Junie called. "Look, it's a Marsh Explorer boat." Miles smiled. "Is it seaworthy?" Junie nodded emphatically. "Miss Harper says you don't wait for calm water. You learn to steer." Miles looked at Harper. Harper's gaze held his, warm and steady. Miles stepped up onto the porch and sat beside them. No secrecy, no apology. Just the three of them, sharing an evening like it belonged to them. And maybe it did. Not because the past stopped mattering, but because the present finally did too. Miles reached into his pocket and placed the brass compass in Junie's small hand. Junie looked down at it, then up at him. "Does it tell you where to go?" she asked. Miles smiled softly. "It tells me I can," he said, "even when I'm scared." Junie nodded, satisfied, and tucked it carefully into her pajama pocket, like it was a promise. Harper leaned her shoulder against Miles's, light, unforced. Miles let himself breathe. Second chances didn't arrive like miracles. They arrived like choices. And this time, Miles was choosing.